My name's Monica Cummins and I live in Letchworth Garden City in Hertfordshire, England. I actually only had any inkling at all that there was anything wrong with me 3 years ago, and that was in September 2019. All of a sudden, without any warning, no idea this was ever going to happen, my left foot just went floppy like that. And there I was, down this country lane, trying to rush to get, so that I'm not caught down a country lane in the dark. And my left foot just wouldn't work. And I was picking up my leg and I was thinking, what's wrong with my foot? And I was dragging my toes along the ground. It was really, really frightening. It was really frightening because I actually knew instantly what it was. Because my mother had had MS 30 years earlier, late in life as well. Next morning, got up, went into the bathroom, everything was normal. I went downstairs, everything was normal, went outside. It had completely gone. This thing that had happened had completely gone. And I was beginning to think, did I imagine all that? And I thought, time to call the doctor. I knew this wasn't going to go away. So I called the doctor. It was locked down, so I had a telephone assessment with the GP, and I explained everything to the GP, what had happened. And once I'd done all that, the GP said, but MS is a young person's disease. You're in your 50s. What makes you think that? And I said, well, my mother had MS. She was diagnosed late in life as well. I got a telephone assessment with the neurologist because we're still in 2020 lockdown. And I explained the entire whole thing to this consultant neurologist at my local hospital. And at the end of all that, he said, but MS is a young person's disease. You're in your 50s. And I said, yes, I know, but my mother had had MS and she was diagnosed late in life. And here's the paradox. I wanted them to tell me it wasn't MS. I didn't want them to think it was MS. And I didn't want to be pushing, saying, yes, I think it is. Because it's not a diagnosis you want to get, and you want someone who knows this stuff to say, no, it's not that. But then I thought, well, if it isn't that, then I'm losing my marbles. And you're in trouble if the better outcome is that you're losing your marbles. But he said, what I'm going to do is refer you to an MS specialist neurologist who's based at the Neurological Hospital at Queen Square, named Dr. Brownlee. And so I met Dr. Brownlee for a face-to-face appointment in August 2021, so just over a year ago, and it was at that appointment that I was diagnosed with primary progressive MS. I thought, right, I'm going to do my own research here. So I went online, as you do, and I actually thought I knew quite a lot about MS, having lived through 10 years of my mother having it. I realised I didn't really know that much about it, and really a lot more had been understood in that intervening. My mother died 20 years ago, so in that period a lot more is now known about MS. And I started thinking, there was quite a lot of stuff on YouTube, on the internet. I initially came across Terry Wiles, who famously had an incredible recovery from a very, very bad place in MS. And she'd written a book, and I bought the book and I read the book, and for a while I started following her protocol, her diet, her proposed diet. Now, I'd been a vegetarian for more than 20 years, so this was tough because it was a very meat-heavy diet. It was just not practical for me. It just was not easy for me to follow, and I wasn't particularly enjoying it. And then I remembered, I recalled some years earlier I'd been driving and I put the radio on and I caught the end of a radio programme about this Australian doctor talking about MS and how he'd had MS diagnosed and how his mother had had MS, and my ears really pricked up, and he was an excellent speaker. And I remember there being talk about a retreat or something, and then the programme ended. And I was thinking, oh God, I would love to have listened to all of that. That was really interesting. This was long before I knew I had MS. But anyway, suddenly this came back to me while I was there doing the Wiles protocol and doing my research. And so I thought, who was that guy? So I went on Google and I Googled Australian Doctor MS. And that brought up George Jelinek, and that took me to the OMS website. I started reading the website. I sent off for the book and I had it sent to me free of charge, and I read it cover to cover, and I thought, that's it, that's for me, that's what I want to do. Everything about it. And the diet was just I was just going, oh, thank God. That's the kind of diet I would want to eat naturally anyway. So yeah, and I read about saturated fat, and on the Wiles protocol I had been eating high quantities of coconut oil, which is saturated fat, and of course meat. So I was a little bit horrified about that. But that's how I came by OMS, through going to Google. The Overcoming MS programme is, in a way, yes, it was put together for people with MS, but really it's a programme for just healthy living. It's just a very, very sensible way to live your life. What I love about it is it provides me with a framework, and what it crucially did for me was give me the power to do something for myself. I just found that the whole framework just gave me everything I needed to help myself.